Hi, I'm so happy to be here in Taipei. And I think for the last 2 days, there's been so much going on, so much mind expanding content. So before I fill you with more information, um, I'd like to just take a pause for just a moment. And if you feel comfortable, I would like you all to stand up. And just very quickly, stretch right up into the heavens, the metaphorical heavens. And you can feel if you want to stretch left and right. And if you feel comfortable, you can just stay standing for a few moments. It's nice to remember that we have bodies as well, in addition to our minds, absorbing and processing. And if you like, you can close your eyes just for a few moments and just ground yourself right here in this space. Remember that we are also in this space, a commons, all of us together here in Taipei. Let's move into the space of gratitude for the humans that have made this possible. The humans of Tao, Taipei, of Layer-0, Taipei, funding the commons. Let's remember that we all have a shared connection, shared motivations, feelings, and ideas. So if you feel comfortable, take a deep breath and just keep grounding. And I'm just going to play this for a few moments. Just feel into the connection that we have. The reason that we're here to build this commons, and just thank all the people, the land of Taiwan that exists and that has allowed us to have this discussion where we talk about democracy and technology, public spaces, and public goods. Great. You can now sit down. I'll keep standing if you like. I'm just going to put my timer so I stick to time. And thank you all for being here and bringing your energy and your ideas. I want to talk about something that I've been working recently on, which is Layer-0, or the thinking about new worlds informed by ancient philosophies. And I really want to ground into the human, right? Because that's why we're all here. I think funding the commons, I love that it exists to sort of change human coordination, the incentives of human coordination to push ourselves, our species, into something towards public goods, public spaces, commons, creating tools and platforms that can help solve so many of our social problems. And it's been wonderful hearing the presentations of the last 2 days, talking about new protocols, open source software, hypercerts, and decentralized IDs, and social bonds, and all these sort of innovations on the technology stack that so many of you here in the room are building. And it's wonderful that you are. It gives us, it's amazing that you're pushing the sort of boundaries in terms of what we can create. And one of the things I heard a lot was about incentives, right? About what makes us do things, what makes us share, what makes us contribute. And I think some of the most important layers sometimes that we don't often bring attention to is the human layer. And this is the layer that I think called Layer-0. This is a really subtle layer. It's a layer of ideas, of belief systems, the sort of stories we tell ourselves about who we are as humans, why we are here, what we want to achieve, the myths and the stories about our culture, about where we've come from and where we want to go, our concepts of human nature and self. It's also such a subtle layer of trauma, right, that all of us as we go through in life from an early age, or even our ancestors, and this trauma that informs how we feel, how we think, what we want to share, and what we think is right and wrong in this world. So in this human layer, I say it's even downstream from incentives. So all the incentives that we try to design in our platforms, they all come from what we believe in, come from what we think as true to ourselves and what we true as humans. And what happens when the stories that we tell ourselves are so important because we have a lot of examples where regardless of the technology that we build, we sort of seem to be recreating the same mistakes over and over again, right? I think so many people in this room here are building tools because you're trying to sort of correct or build something new. Yet why do we keep reverting back to the same stories? We keep building tools and platforms of extraction around consumption, around ideas of power and power taking from the weak, and this being as just, this is being as what is fair. Free basics, WorldCoin, Web 2, Web 3 are very different in function. And one of the most successful projects to come out of the last sort of bull run, if you want to say, the Bored Apes project, right? It's like raising millions of dollars to build another metaverse, a game, push more content, rather than build things that I think all of us here care about, right? Why are we eventually sort of going into that direction of constantly building these kinds of tools? I think it's worth reflecting. And it's not the technology, because the technology has always offered us different possibilities, but it's what we as humans ultimately feel is in my best interest, based on the beliefs and the values that we hold. Tim Wu, a Harvard professor, a Columbia professor, in his book Master Switch, sort of showed how throughout the 20th century, as sort of media started out decentralized, from the telegram to radio, film, and then the internet, and eventually, through the power of market forces, becomes centralized, captured by the forces, captured by authority. And here we come again with Web3 and blockchain, trying to disrupt this. And we hope and we want and we believe that we're going to build something new. But we have to remember that we're fighting against invisible forces, powerful forces that exist not just outside, but in our minds. And we are products of these very systems that we want to change. I think this is something that is really important to consider. That our minds, from a very early age, are trained, just like the AIs in our pockets and in our computers, trained to think in certain ways, trained to believe that what is it that we want from life, and what is it that's really important and that's worth fighting over, worth going into war over, worth abusing, worth hating, worth disconnecting from. And bringing attention. And it raises a question to me, which is how do I even reimagine when my mind and my ability to imagine itself is a product of the very systems that we all want to change, the systems of extraction, systems of consumption. And this is sort of a landing point that maybe I want to leave you with, is around how do we find this change? How do we make this change on this Layer-0 level? Where we can then push on to build the transformative technologies and fulfill the potential of the technology that you want to build. And this is where I come into Asian philosophies. And it's beautiful that we're here in Taiwan, a land where so much of Asian spiritual systems have converged. Buddhism, Taoism, we have Zen, we have so many powerful sort of humanistic systems that have come together and made this country possible in going over centuries. And it's these very roots that I think can be a GPS for us to navigate and for us to think through in our own inner and outer journeys of how do we make this evolution and move forward. And I want to share a little bit in the very short period of time I have, because these are very huge themes and topics, but in the very short time that we have together, is one of the key principles or the key sort of base of Asian philosophies. It's about interconnectedness. I heard this in Ellie's presentation yesterday, in so many presentations about the shared, what is it that makes us human? And this idea that we are not separate individuals from each other, nor are we separate from our planet or from the technology that we build. There's a certain oneness that brings us all together. There's a sort of oneness that makes us feel alive. And it's this oneness that sometimes we feel hard to remember. We've forgotten. We've been glued to what is it that we are glued to. And this can be a fundamental principle, I think, to inform to how we think about ourselves into relation with the world. Um, there's a beautiful sort of framework that I want to share, which I think can help us think through how we think about our relationship with technology. Yu Kui, a scholar based in Hong Kong, in his book, talked about Chinese cosmotechnics. And it's this idea that technology can be a very important layer that mediates our connection with something larger, our connection with our life force, our connection that makes all of us conscious and alive. And it's this relational thinking where technology mediates this reality. Yet, it's not hard to see today that technology in so many ways is taking us apart, taking us further away apart. And that's also true, and that's also happening. And what he shows us is we can imagine a world where we have this unification of the Tao and the Qi. So this is a Chinese concept from Taoism and from Confucianism, this idea of the Tao, which is the cosmos, and the Qi, which is the tool of the technique. And this idea that we can make technology serve our greater human purpose and and that can be the highest fulfillment of technology rather than taking us apart. And so this is a question that I think is valid for all technologists in the room or all of us, right? What are we optimizing technology for? What is it that we want to create? What is it that really makes us content and fulfills us and makes us happy? And I don't have a lot of time, but there's two stories from Zhuangzi, who's one of the most famous, well-known Chinese philosophers within the space of Taoism. The butcher of Baoding, which is a famous story which many of you in the room are maybe well aware of. He's a butcher who says that while other butchers change their knives every 1 month, a bad butcher changes his knife every 1 month, a good one every 1 year. I never change my knife ever because my carving of the bull is guided by a sort of an understanding, a greater guidance and a connection, an awareness of this connection, which makes my knife, the technology, even more powerful, even more meaningful, even more purposeful. And this is an example of technology guided by this higher truth, by this sort of nature. This other example of how the sort of technology can take us away from what it means to be human is the story of when a man walks into a farmer and sees him farming the fields. And he asks him, haven't you heard of this new technology that allows you to water the entire fields just from standing in this one position? And he turns to the man and says, I know about this technology, but the reason I don't do it because it will mean I will develop a jishin or what can be translated as a machine heart, but I think the better translation, as what Yu Kui explains, is a calculative mind, because the heart and the mind in Chinese can be similar concepts. And this idea that we will lose focus of what makes us human and got caught in this game of incentives and manipulation and extraction and forget what is it that actually we want to feel here alive. So how do we imagine this new commons? How do we imagine this layer-0 evolution? So we've talked about decentralized infrastructure, the plurality and the vision that our friends here in Taiwan have been working on, and that's so great that we're sort of building this. Michelle Bowen, the scholar, talks about this cosmo-local economies and these ideas of sort of new economies and new communities that are possible. And that's all wonderful, and it's great that all of you in the room here are working and building on these platforms and tools, and I think that's really powerful stuff that's happening. So what could be some of those sort of new values? What could be some of these layer-0 evolutions? I think here we can sort of bring our attention to this idea again of oneness and move into not just talking about it, it's not just lip service, it's not just another buzzword, but feel it, experience it. This is what Asian philosophy is all about. It's about experiential, direct experience rather than knowledge or mind level conceptual. It's about evolution over revolution, about being present, truly being in this moment and knowing that there is no future, that mythical future that we're always trying to build through our goals and plans, but to really ground into where we are today and build the world where we are today. And there's I say layer 0, and because zero has another level of significance in Asia. I come from India, and the word shunya, the number shunya, 0, represents something much more deeper than zero or nothing. It's actually the emptiness and fullness all together. This idea of the void of something much more powerful that is all in us all at a much deeper level. In Zen Buddhism, they talked about the wushin, or the no mind. And this idea of what happens when you free your mind of all the stories, of all the myths about what you've been told for your entire life, about fame, power, money, identity, all of these things, to free your mind and find a level, find an inner intrinsic incentive about why you want to live, what you want to contribute, and participate in building this new commons from that space where you can really open up and really build this new world. Because it's important to remember that we are living in this system of, whether you want to call it, of consumerism, of capitalism. I'm not going to be the person that dies on the hill of trying to sort of talk about ending systems, but I think it's really important to sort of remember that this isn't an outer journey. This starts at home. This starts with all of us, and to sort of really bring our attention to what is it that makes us human, and how can we look towards new frameworks to build around and to guide our lives on a day-to-day basis. So these are some of the ideas that I'm sort of hoping to sort of take forward in my own work. I work with an organization called Digital Asia Hub. We're a think tank in Hong Kong, and we sort of organize workshops and conferences around how critiquing our relationship with technology. A project I'm starting out called Light Forest, which is looking at how Asian spiritual philosophies can inform our relationship with technology. And I'm based in Chiang Mai, and I would love to sort of have this conversation with all of you, learn more about the technology that you're building, and see and build this sort of new world that I think is happening. We can all feel it, we can all see it sometimes, and I think it's really great that we all have this opportunity to be here. And so again, so thankful to our hosts here, Funding the Commons, and Gov0, Tao0, and all our friends here in Taipei. So thank you so much, and safe travels for those of you going back soon, and hope to talk to you soon.